Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Rhythm Shift and I'm back with another toy review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Super 7 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Shredder figure. Now I have to confess, this is a figure that I was very much looking forward to in this line because I don't know why, but when I got my first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figure, which was a foot soldier back in the day, because they were very hard to get, and the only figure that they had left at the time in the shop when I went to get a toy was the foot soldier. And I remember looking at the back of the box and seeing the 10 figures on the back of the box, and I was looking at them and they looked so cool, you know, they looked really impressive. And when I saw the Shredder figure on the back of the old box art, I thought he looked incredible. Like he just looked really cool. I thought to myself, hang on a minute, he's got no shirt on like he does in the cartoon, but he still looks cool. So it was a figure that I was very much anticipating. Now on the downside of that is that when I actually did get the figure a little bit later on, I felt him quite disappointing because he didn't match up to the box art in the sense that his helmet was not painted correctly. It's like they left an area of the helmet unpainted and they put eyebrows there instead, which to me just looks stupid. And that kind of dampened my joy of getting that figure as much as I had been anticipating getting him. And also, you know, his stance was a bit strange. You know, he was stuck in that awkward pose, and he couldn't really. He never had clenched fists. He had like one open hand and one hand where it was just two fingers gripping with a thumb. So those things were a little bit strange, but nonetheless, I still did enjoy the figure. Right now, when Super 7 said they were going to be making this Ultimates toy line based on the vintage toys, Shredder was the first one that I was looking forward to when they announced the original four. The original four was Raphael, Splinter, Master Splinter, a Foot Soldier, and Baxter Stockman. But the figures that I was really looking forward to the most from the jump were obviously the four Ninja Turtles, because those are the main heroes. But April O'Neil, Shredder, Casey Jones, those are some of my most wanted figures. And then aside from that, you know, other figures I really enjoyed were Usagi Yojimbo, General Trag, who else? Who were the ones I really liked as a child? Krang was cool, but I only had Krang in the Bubble Walker. But, you know, I wanted characters like a Scumbug, maybe a Slash. Worm's definitely one I want, because I remember him from the Archie comics. Wingnut and Screwloose. The Ray Fillet, but he's one that's been announced to be in the next wave, so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, that aside, Shredder was one of the ones I was most anticipating because I had high hopes that they would fix or rectify the issues that plagued the original release, and they did. You know, they fixed the helmet, but there's another area which they did not address, which I think would have helped this toy sell much better, but I'll get to that when I actually start talking about the figure itself. So here you've got the brown outer shipping box as we've seen before. So the figure is very much well protected. That's the front. Here's the back. On the front it just says Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and it tells you the character's name, Shredder. So if we open the box, you're going to get this inside, which is standard for most figures. You get the figure in a plastic bag, which, as I say, the plastic bag's probably a bit of overkill, but take this off. And then inside the box you've got this, which is, as I said, pretty standard for these figures. You get the purple outer slipcase with a picture of the character inside. So you've got a picture of the Shredder there, and you've got two of his, I suppose, his spikes there, which is pretty cool. On the back it says, once again, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the vintage 80s cartoon toy line / logo. Now, as I've said before, the bad guys are supposed to come on purple and the good guys are supposed to come on green. Now, I hate it when people don't adhere to their own rules. And in this wave, you've got a character called Mutagen Man, and he comes on a green flipping card. He comes with a green slipcase, and that's totally fucked up because, okay, maybe Mutagen Man turned good in the TV series, but on the back of the box of the toys, Mutagen Man was always listed as a villain. So if this toy line is supposed to be recreating the vintage toys, based upon the vintage toys, why are you changing Mutagen Man to be a hero character when he was always carded as a villainous character? See, some people's logic just doesn't add up. So anyway, on the top of the box you've got this Ultimates logo there, whatever. Taking him out the slipcase, you will see that you have quite a nice figure inside. So first off, from the jump, as you can see, the area that I said was shitty on the original toy, which was the helmet, for some stupid reason Super 7 have decided to include that era variant as an accessory. But here you've got the original helmet, which is how it was supposed to look on the original toy, which is what I fell in love with when I saw the card back for the original 10 figures back in, was it 1990? I think that's when I started getting these toys, 1990. Was it 89? 1990, I say, because the Batman movie came out in 1989 and I wasn't playing with TMNT toys then. Anyway, so yeah, that's the way the helmet should look, and they've included this stupid accessory. Now my thing is this, right? The thing that I think would have helped this figure sell a lot better is if, rather than including this stupid error head, they could have included a piece that you put over Shredder's chest to make it look like he's wearing a shirt. It could have been a simple clip-on piece, just like what was I reviewing recently? I was reviewing these Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Z putties. Check this out. You've got the Z putty here, as you can see, but you've got a little clip-on piece, which is this little harness thing, clips onto his chest to make it look like you've got a hit effect there. So he's being attacked. They could have made a similar harness type piece to slip over Shredder's chest, and I think this figure would have flown off the shelves. I think this, well, it's not on the shelves in most toy stores. It is in some, but mainly you get them online. But the point is that reading on the online forums and stuff, a lot of collectors were put off of this figure, saying that, oh, I don't really want a Shredder that's shirtless. I'll try and wait for the Toon version instead if they ever make one of those. Because towards the end of the vintage toy line, they did make a Toon Shredder where they painted his helmet correctly and his chest was painted, and he was in the colour scheme of the vintage, well, not the 80s cartoon. But my point is that even if it was a black piece covering his chest, it would have helped this figure sell much more, because people would have then thought, you know what, I've got a decent option to display this toy Shredder in a manner which fits into my design aesthetics. But nobody's going to be using this head. You know, nobody wants this head. It was a fucking stupid, pointless accessory to include. Whereas if you'd have included a shirt piece, that would have made this figure appeal to those who wanted a shirt. Now, it doesn't really matter to me too much, because I liked the way Shredder looked as a vintage toy with his chest exposed, because I made it, in my storyline, I made it like he's so skilled as a ninja master that he leaves his chest exposed as a sort of taunt to his enemies, to make them try and think that they've got a chance to come in and hit him with it in one of his vital points. But it just lures them in close enough for him to be able to shred them with his armor and his spikes. So it kind of works in my own storyline. But with that being said, I remember in the vintage, when I was collecting the vintage toys, once I got Slice and Dice Shredder, that Shredder was I think it was a better Shredder figure. I didn't use the wacky action feature very much because I don't really like action features in toys too much, but the sculpt and his stance and his poise was much better than the original vintage first release Shredder. So for the most part, once I got the Slice and Dice Shredder, that was my main default Shredder for my games. But anyway, good looking figure nonetheless. Comes with his accessories as packaged in box here, and the good thing about these is that they're not falling out. You know, I had some problems when it came to Michelangelo and Rocksteady and Wave 3, where as soon as I took them out of the slipcase, the accessories are already fallen down. So that's not a problem for anybody who's a mint on card collector. That's not a problem here, because they're taped in, it seems. All the weapons are taped in, where they weren't on Michelangelo and Rocksteady. And on the back here, you get a bio, but as I've said before, it's a bit annoying that they don't include all of the vintage bio, they just include a portion of it. So let's read it. It says, Shredder, if I'm correct in my memory, Shredder is supposed to be 40 years old, and I think he's around 6'2", supposedly, if I remember the vintage stats correctly. Right, so it says Shredder, the bad guy leader. Shredder is the hideous, gruesome, and all-around bad guy leader of the Foot Clan, and the unorganized band of evil ninjas. This lowlife came to power when he betrayed his ninja master, Hamato Yoshi, now Splinter. Shredder wants nothing more than control of the world, and to get there he'll stop at nothing, even if it means grating his victims like cheese with his razor-sharp armor. The obstacles in his path are none other than the turtles, and he means to destroy them. It's quite a sinister bio. But the interesting thing about that is that, for those of you who are familiar with the vintage, I keep saying vintage, but they are, the original Eastman-led comic, Shredder was the person who actually murdered Hamato Yoshi, and Splinter was the rat that Hamato Yoshi kept as a pet, because in the original concept storyline, Hamato Yoshi fell in love with a woman named Tang Shen, if I remember the story correctly, and then Shredder's older brother Uruku Nagi was jealous because of Hamato Yoshi, and he loved Tang Shen too. So when he couldn't have her, he decided to try and force Tang Shen to love him. Hamato Yoshi came in, they had a fight to the death, and Uruku Nagi died. So Hamato Yoshi fled to America, but Uruku Saki, which is the Shredder, he was out for vengeance, and he trained for many years until he was strong enough to seek vengeance for the death of his older brother, and then he became known as the Shredder. He tracked Hamato Yoshi down to the USA, murdered him and Tang Shen, but Splinter escaped and went into the sewers, and then eventually Splinter came across the turtles and the mutagen, and they got mutated. I'm gonna say morphed. They got mutated into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then in issue 1 of the Eastman-led TMNT comic, Hamato Yoshi's wish was for the turtles to avenge the death of Hamato Yoshi, and that's where the story starts. So it's quite a different origin compared to the cartoon, and I'll say this. I actually prefer the cartoon origin where Splinter is Hamato Yoshi for one reason. The reason is because it gave the turtles a purpose, in the sense that they were trying to restore Splinter back to his human form. That is something that's like an ongoing story arc, whereas and it gives them a motivation and a purpose beyond just, fighting crime and X, Y, and Z. So I think it made it a little bit more depth, give the story more depth, and also it's more believable that Hamato Yoshi was morphed into, I keep saying morphed, mutated into a rat, than a rat being mutated into a human and being able to do martial arts. That just doesn't, a rat mimicking his master's martial arts moves is just a bit far-fetched to me. And obviously I was first introduced to the Turtles by the 80s cartoon, so that story seems to be the one that I kind of like. But I do like the backstory as well of Hamato Yoshi being in love with Tang Shen. So I kind of mix the storylines. I take that aspect, and I also take the death of Shredder's older brother into the story, and I make my own thing, which is what you do with these toys. You're supposed to have fun with them. But anyway, I've been talking a lot, so let me get this out of the box and we'll take a look at the figure itself. Let's do that because I've been talking a lot. Okay, so here we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Shredder figure, and as I said previously, this is a figure that I was massively looking forward to. Definitely one of my most anticipated figures from this toy line. So straight out of the box, he looks great. I mean, this is the Shredder that I saw on the back of the Foot Soldier box back in 1990, I believe it was, and I fell in love with that figure. And unfortunately, the real Shredder figure didn't quite live up to my expectations. If I just bring him on the scene here, although I did still enjoy him, don't get me wrong, I did still enjoy him quite considerably, but he looked like this. So this vintage shredder, this is the one I played with as I was growing up. As you can see, his helmet isn't painted correctly. Now, Super 7 acting as if this is like, oh, and nobody noticed that his helmet wasn't painted correctly. No, fuck that. I noticed straight away, man, because the back of the card, his helmet was looking on point like this. Like this, and when we got the actual figure, we retreated to this stupid, some dickhead decided to paint eyebrows and shredder and think that would be cool. No, man, the helmet would be the helmet being the correct color would have been much cooler. So there you got them. There you got them. Now, in terms of color, the color's a perfect match. I mean, it's quite incredible how close they've been able to make this new figure in terms of its color scheme. So that's very appealing to me. Now, it does come with some accessories. Bear with me. Let me get them here. Where are we at? Oh, I need to get them out of the box. Right. Well, okay, before we do accessories, let's do size. So, height-wise, let's take you out of the way for a moment. Height-wise, this shredder stands at just about 7 inches tall. Yeah, just about 7 inches tall. And as I said, this is a 7-inch toy line, which is perfectly compatible for things such as Storm Collectibles, who I'll bring a Storm figure on the set now. So you've got Storm Kazuya. They're roughly about the same height, although Shredder is definitely smaller build. But that's okay, they work together. Or who else have we got? Let's bring a... I'm just using what I've got to hand here again. So let's bring Johnny Cage on the scene again. So this is the McFarlane Mortal Kombat Johnny Cage. As you can see, they are in scale with each other. Although Shredder is taller than Johnny Cage, but it's okay, still workable, because Shredder still stands taller than the Turtles, and that's the most important point. So if I bring a turtle on the scene here, let's bring Michelangelo, because he's what I've got to hand. Michelangelo stands at you know, smaller than the Shredder, and that's kind of how it should be. Shredder should be imposing and intimidating. Now, if we take a foot soldier, the foot soldier actually stands slightly taller than the Shredder, which I'd have preferred it to have been the other way around. But, you know, the foot soldiers have got these weird heads. You know, these foot soldiers, they always look to me like Homer Simpson in disguise. You know, the same sort of head shape. So it'd be quite funny, you know, if Homer Simpson was a foot soldier. Probably be the most incompetent foot soldier ever. But so that's how Shredder looks relative to some other figures in this line. So let's focus on the Shredder for a moment. Take you guys out the scene. So the Shredder himself, he comes with two different capes, which I'll show in a moment. The one that I use, the one of choice for me, is the one that's the real fabric cape. It's got a wire going through it, so you can position the wire to bend it to make it different positions. And I like this because that's a nice throwback to the vintage cloth cape that the original 80s Shredder came with. Now let's go over some articulation. So articulation wise, his head can move left and right, can't look up at all, can't look down at all, so that's a bit of a bummer. Shoulders rotate 360 at the elbow, at the shoulder. He's got an upper bicep cut here. He's got a single bend on the elbow joint. He has an elbow swivel, which is a bit tight on my one, but it's there. He has a wrist swivel here, and in and out motion on his fists. See there? Now, no ab crunch, which hurts some of these human figures, because the more human figures without turtle shells could really benefit from an ab crunch, but there's none here. Waist twist, there. Can kick forward that far, kick backwards not very far at all. Side splits he does perfectly. He can bend at the knee for a single bend there. He has upper lower leg rotation there, but he also has rotation at the knee itself, so there's some redundant articulation points You know, some points of articulation just aren't needed because there's another point of articulation which serves the same function, which is weird. You know, those joints could have been used to give us double hinged knees or double hinged elbows or even an ab crunch. However, he can move his foot forward and up and down, and he's got some slight pivot. But it's a bit lazily painted, because if you look here, you can see the purple's a different colour, where they didn't actually spray paint the piece before attaching it to the figure. It's like they assembled the figure, then spray painted it. So that's a bit of a nuisance, and it's the same on each foot. It's not a major thing, but it's a thing, you know. So that is how he looks, and that's how he's articulated. So let's talk now about some of his accessories. So he comes with a few different parts. Let me get them here. I had them to hand a moment ago. Right, so I managed to find Shredder's accessories, so let's get into it. So he comes with quite a few different parts. Let's take a look at some of them. First of all, let's talk about his cape. I suppose, no. Let's start with the basic things first, then we'll get to the cape, because that comes with the head sopping and everything else. So he comes with, I'll just show it now, this plastic cape, slightly rubbery, slightly soft, and this kind of, if you don't want to use the soft goods cape, you can use this one. Okay, great, fine. Comes with a sword, which is like the same sword that came with Leonardo in the Ultimates, same wave, wave 2. Comes with ninja weapons, Karma. Is this an Indian fist dagger? I can never remember. One of them's an Indian fist dagger and the other's a fist dagger. Comes with a belt, which is, well, I'll show you what that does in a moment. He also comes with 2 shuriken, which are the same as the ones that come with the turtles. Everything weapons wise is the same as comes with a turtle. And he also comes with a selection of fists, or hands I should say. So he has 2 punching fists here, and he has 2 open hands here. Alright, so let's start with the cape. So this is how I have my Shredder displayed. The cape is loose and flowing, but inside the box he comes packaged the same way the vintage one did, with a belt around the waist. Okay, so you can recreate that look by using this extra black belt here. So what you would do is pinch it at the waist, put the belt on the waist like so, thread it around, and the Velcro should hold it together. Just got to check which side the Velcro's on. Right, so he's basically wearing a belt over a belt, which is just some of these design choices, man. I mean, sometimes you feel like you want to just slap a toy designer sometimes and say, what the hell are you thinking, man? Wasting time on bullshit. But let's get it on. So it's a bit fiddly, bear with me while I just thread this around and get it to stick in place if I can, because there's really not much Velcro on this at all, but it holds. Okay, there we go. So essentially what you've got is you've got to hide this belt under that belt, which is the most fucking redundant thing I've ever seen on a toy, but we'll do it just for display sake, for showing you what you can do with this figure. But now the belt's all twisted up and doesn't want to. What a hassle for something so fucking. Alright, let's see. This is how it's gone now. Let me fix this. So maybe I had it on the wrong way round. Let me try this way. Yeah, I had it on the wrong way round. My fault. Let's do it again. Right, so here we have it. It's finally on. This is how he looks. When you get him out of the box straight away, this is how he'll be packaged. With a belt over a belt, which is like some Tetsuya Nomura type design choices. For those of you who don't know, Tetsuya Nomura does the designs for Final Fantasy, and if you notice, he uses a lot of belts on his characters. But yeah, so that's how it would look and that's supposed to be a throwback to this, which if you want to go for that old-fashioned toy look, I suppose I could see somebody might enjoy having this shredder this way. Not for me personally. I mean, from the back it just doesn't really look that great. From the front it's passable, but I think there's a better way that this could have been done. But this is how Super 7 decided to do it. So that's how you can have them to look that way. Now you can change the look again by taking this belt off, taking the whole head off, and then you can just unfasten the cape over his shoulders like that. You could put this rubber cape on. So we put the rubber cape on. Then we put his head back. Then you have this look, which isn't bad actually. It's actually pretty cool. That looks very nice, and you don't have to worry about the soft goods cape getting damaged or, you know, getting covered in fluff or lint or anything like that. And you have your shredder, which looks pretty cool. Looks like the card back shredder from the vintage toy line, and this cape just hangs like that. But I've noticed personally in my own toy collection that sometimes capes like this can be a bit of a liability, because if, for example, you live in a warm, like it's summer, it doesn't get too hot over here, but in the summer it does sometimes get quite hot. If you leave these types of materials in a package with, say, if I was to put this in a package with a sword like that, and I stored this away, I would find that this would heat up and it would start to melt, and when I pull this off, it would take the silver off the sword and leave a silver mark on this type of cape. So I've learnt my lesson with other toys with capes similar to this in the past, that I have to store them separately, like put them in maybe what I tend to use is comic bags. For example, I put stuff in comic bags like this, but just don't store it with any other accessories, otherwise you might end up damaging it. So I'm not going to be using that myself, but just demonstrating it for those who want to see it. Now, if for those of you who want to see the body sculpt on Shredder, you know, it's very, very reminiscent to the vintage toy. The muscle definition is all the same as the sculpting that was on the original 88-89 Shredder figure from Playmates. But what I'm going to do is I like to display my Shredder with this soft goods cape. Now I'm going to put his head back on, but I'm not going to put his head back on fully because I want to talk about the next thing. So Shredder also comes with this waste of time accessory right here. As you can see, somebody thought it would be cute or funny to include this production error Shredder head with this figure. Someone thought it would be cute or funny. Well, I'm going to tell you something, and it ain't cute and it ain't funny. This is how this old Shredder looks, right? And this head is supposed to mimic that. So let's put it on the body. And there's a reason why I'm going to speak bad of this accessory, and I'll get to it in a minute. Right, so it's plugged on there. So now you've got a Shredder that looks like fucking Frankenstein's monster, with this stupid overextended forehead line. So his hair, right, and you've got the vintage version here, right, but it even looked better on the vintage toy than it does in this stupid update. And there's a reason why I don't like this accessory, because, you know, I like to visit online forums where people discuss toys and so forth. And you know, I watch a lot of other reviewers as well. And one of the common complaints that I've heard about this particular Super 7 Shredder figure is that he has no shirt. Now, my thought was, if I was a toy designer, right, and I wanted to sell this toy, and I'm thinking, okay, a lot of people were unhappy with the vintage Shredder figure because he was shirtless. Okay, me personally, I don't mind, but a lot of fans say they would rather Shredder had a shirt on, blah blah blah. So a lot of people want to wait for the toon version of this toy, if ever it gets made. Well, if instead of including this stupid head, if you have included a piece that actually goes over Shredder's chest to cover it, and he had his arms exposed, just something that, like, as I said in the prologue to this video, like, you know, You see this harness on this MMPR putty figure, it just slides over the chest and you get the hit effect. They could have done a similar thing that just slides over the front of Shredder's chest to make him look like he had a shirt on, and I guarantee you this figure would have sold more than it actually did, because a lot of people sidestepped this Shredder because they thought, I don't want a Shredder without a shirt in my collection. Whereas if they'd have given fans the option rather than this redundant waste of time accessory, you'd have sold a lot more, man. You'd have sold a lot more. Now, I don't know who's sitting there on your design team who didn't see that problem prior to releasing this figure, but come on, man. Get in tune with the times. Get in tune with your audience, man. See, I'm one of the guys who doesn't care because I like this shirtless Shredder, but if they'd have given the option for fans to put the shirt on, you'd have sold a lot more. And even this is a fault anyway, because Shredder was initially supposed to have a shirt, but it was a production error that made him be shirtless. So sometimes you got to wonder why people carry mistakes over from generation to generation rather than actually rectifying them and correcting them. Another great example is, for example, just, as I'm speaking about it, I'll point this out. Something that bugs me with Transformers is that oftentimes you see Hasbro release Starscream figures and his Decepticon faction symbols are actually this way around on his wings. It's not coming in shot. This way around on his wings when he's in robot mode, which is upside down. They're actually supposed to be that way up, and even on the vintage box art, Starscream is depicted with his faction symbols that way up when he's in robot mode. If they're upside down, they become redundant. It's like, I've said this, to other friends who collect toys. It's like, the reasoning is this: if you look in the military, right, and your officers have their ranks displayed, which officer is displaying their rank upside down? So why would a Decepticon display his faction symbol upside down in bot mode? Doesn't make any sense. Starscream shakes his head. But these are some of the design choices that are carried over from generation to generation, which don't get corrected and just end up pissing me off because, I pay attention to little details, man, and when things aren't on point, it certainly pisses me off. So, that aside, let's talk about Shredder again. We went over his accessories already. We've gone over his articulation. We've gone over the elephant in the room, which is this redundant head, which really I'm going to throw back in the box and it's probably never going to see the light of day ever again. At least not in my display or my collection. Other than that, he has his sword, and he can hold his sword because now he's finally got a proper grip in hand rather than this weird ass two-fingered approach to gripping. Some strange choices made with this vintage Shredder figure. But yeah, he can hold his sword very well. So let's get that in his hand and display him with that. So he looks good. The sword fits fine and he holds it securely. It doesn't wobble around. It's very secure in his hands. But again, it doesn't look like a katana blade, as I said in the Leonardo review. This looks more like a samurai sword to me. Now, I wouldn't have minded if they give Shredder this sword, but realistically, you should be following the vintage design template, so the sword should look like the vintage Leonardo sword. But hey, that's what we got here. He also comes with some shuriken, which he doesn't really hold too well, but he can if you put his thumb through the hole. If you put his thumb through that center hole, he can hold the shuriken somewhat better because he doesn't really have a tight grip to hold it. So he can have his shuriken there. He also has the fists. Let's show the fist. So we can unplug that hand there. I think that's quite tight, but it did come out. And you can have him throwing a punch, which I don't really need a punching hand for Shredder because he's got his spikes. He can be striking like with the spikes rather than his actual fists. But if you want to have Shredder punching, he's got a fist there. He has the open hand, which is to simulate the vintage toy open hand, which is alright if you want to get him in a pose that's kind of reminiscent to the vintage one, which is actually based on one of the comic panels from, I think, issue 1 of the Eastman and Laird comic, where Shredder's in this sort of pose like that, which is what the vintage toy was actually supposed to be trying to do. Whether it is successful or not is another story. But bear with me a minute, I think I've actually got that comic to hand. I can find the page. I believe it's in issue 1. Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, it should be just finding it here. Yeah, here we go. This is the pose I'm talking about. The Shredder toy was based on this pose here. So that's why he's in that awkward sort of crouch down with that palm hand extended and the other hand back. That's kind of what they based the original Playmates vintage toy on. So that's why you can see on the vintage toy he has that sort of low down crouched pose in that sort of position. So that's the reason why he's in this awkward looking weird stance, because they based it on that particular panel. But as I said, if you want to recreate that look, you can do so here, which is alright. Now, one area where I think it's okay for them to have the double rotation on the upper elbow and lower wrist is that you can actually turn the wrist around a bit to have the spikes on the top like that, but his elbow is still inward, so he's going to bend that way. But I saw some reviewers complaining that his spikes were stuck on the side of his hand and you can't put them on the top. Well, you can, you just got to move that particular joint there, or alternatively just turn it at the bicep and you can have the spike set on the top of his hand instead of the side. So that can be rectified with a little bit of clever posing. So let me put his regular hand back in again so you can grip things. And he also comes with a couple weapons, so let's see him with the Karma, which is here, and that looks like this. In his hand, he holds it slightly better than the Turtles. It doesn't wobble around as much as it did with the Ninja Turtles themselves, so he holds that quite well. I suppose you could have him dual wielding with a sword and that, so that could be good for Shredder. And he also has his fist dagger, which also fits in very well. So you've got some nice options for displaying your Shredder with some actual weapons in his hands, so that's kind of cool. There we go, it's kind of cool. So yeah, all in all, he displays quite well. And I'm quite happy with this figure in the sense that he is what I wanted. I wanted a Shredder that looked just like the vintage toy, and in that sense I was not disappointed, because he lived up to the expectations that I had, which were not met in the 80s. Now I still say double hinged elbows, double hinged knees and ab crunch for figures that can actually benefit from it would be useful in this line, but I know that's not going to happen, or I know that didn't happen, so I can't wallow on that too much. But for the figure I got, I think he's cool. I mean, he's still one of my favourites in this Ultimate lineup because he ticked the boxes that I had personally wanting to be ticked. But he could have been better in the sense that he could have included some of the things that I mentioned to make him look more more in line with how fans may have wanted to get a Shredder, you know? So what else do I have to say about this? Well, I've done the comparisons. He does look like the vintage toy. It's not really much to say about that. But to be honest, Shredder figures have been very few over the years, in the sense that the NECA Shredder figure never came out at the same time as those 2008 Turtles, and I was greatly disappointed about that because, funnily enough, Shredder is actually one of my favourite characters in all of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, he's just such a cool character, great villain, and yeah, he's one of my favourite characters in TMNT. But so sometimes you have to take what you can get, because also in the 2011 Playmates Turtle line, they did not get to a Shredder figure, and now finally they're trying to pass off some shitty Shredder figure in a 2-pack that is just absolutely abysmal. So yeah, getting a good Shredder is not that easy. I know there's the Mecha-Toon version, but I'm not really into the cartoon designs. I prefer the toy. So for that reason, this Shredder is my Shredder of choice. So there he is. And yeah, let's get him on a rotation. Alone. That's how he looks with the Ninja Turtles. I've showed how he looks with the Foot Soldier. Let me show how he looks with Bebop and Rocksteady. Because these guys are brutes. But yeah, Rocksteady's huge, as is Bebop. Who's here? These guys are real thugs. And it's pretty cool to actually see. We've got the, now we have the original 4 villains from the vintage toy line all together. If I just get a Foot Soldier in there as well, if Bebop stands up, because these guys are quite top heavy and difficult to pose, but just one more missing, which would be the Foot Soldier. Put him over here, and that completes the original 4 villains from the 88/89 TMNT action figure toy line, and that's great to see, man. I mean, having these all together really does bring that nostalgia feeling home. You know, it really makes it feel like, yeah, this was how I felt when I was collecting the toys as a child. Let's get him on a rotation. So there we go. The big boss and his 2 henchmen. All looking very good. As I say, when you get one of these figures, it's like, okay, this looks cool, it's fine. But it's really when you start to display them together that they really come to life, and it really brings that vintage nostalgia hit home, for me particularly. Yeah, man. And I think I was fortunate in that I got Bebop, Rocksteady and Shredder. Yeah, Bebop, Rocksteady and Shredder on the same day. I was fortunate to get them in Christmas of 1990, I believe that was. Or was it 1991? No, it was 1990. So yeah, there you have it. That's my review of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Shredder figure. What are my final thoughts? Do I think this figure is worthwhile? Yeah, for sure, because Shredder's an integral part to the TMNT storyline. Whichever incarnation you're into, Shredder's always been a key player. You know, he was the first villain introduced into the comics, and he's just, you know, I mean, he's part of TMNT, man. So I'm glad to have him. Only downsides are they should have made a shirt piece to include for him, and double hinged elbows, double hinged knees, and ab crunch would have been welcome. Other than that, I'd give this figure a solid 8 out of 10. But I'm just happy to have a Shredder that actually corrects the old mistake of the vintage toy, the stupid helmet mistake. So that's that. I think including the faulty helmet was a bad idea, because I haven't seen one collector online, on any forums or on any other toy reviewers channels who actually prefer to use that faulty Shredder head. So it was a bit of a waste of time, and things like that annoy me when there are much more worthwhile accessories that could have been included and they decided to do something silly instead. But yeah, that's that. I hope you've enjoyed the review, and I'm going to be on to the next one. So yeah, take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review. There is one other accessory Shredder does come with, which I also forgot to mention. You know, all these Ninja Turtles come with the same weapons, so sometimes I forget who comes with what, but Shredder has one of these. So you can hold that very well. And again, you can stab with it, slash, slice, dice, you name it. Shredder's got one of these too. So just because I forgot to mention this weapon in the review, he's got one of them. Okay? Alright, see you on the next review. Take care.